Hi guys, so hello. Just want to say that I can't, my bar is disconnecting me from you. So if you have questions, put your questions out there and I promise I'll come back and answer them later. Is that okay? That's okay. Just can't get to them. Some of them, they kind of pop up and we can see them, but most times not. So today, we're going to do several things as it seems like you guys are catching on, and we're really excited about that. I posted something the other day about cherries and inflammation, and it was just because I was so upset that my Wednesday day off was not my day off. I had a ton of stuff to do, so I had to make Friday my day off. So I just wanted to post something, and I was saying, well, one thing is still the norm, and that's that I have my cherries. And I just let you guys know that I have 20 cherries every morning in the summertime, especially in the summertime, really when they're available, which is at least the summertime, because they fight inflammation. And I was just surprised at how many of you were surprised that cherries fight inflammation. I mean, that is like the people that take ibuprofen for pain, cherries for knee inflammation for sure. So I decided that we would do a little more of just kind of giving you some basics. So today's recipe is going to be something very basic, something that you can grab from your garden in terms of everybody can get cucumbers because everybody that has a garden has way more than they could ever eat. So it's easy enough to go and borrow some cucumbers from your local gardener. But the medicinal properties associated with what we're going to do today, if you think cherries are great for inflammation, this stuff here, today's meal, is not only anti-inflammatory rich, but anti-cancerous, bringing down the blood pressure, just so many things. And it gels in with what we're talking about in the Gospel of Mark today. So last week, or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that Levi, the tax collector, went through the extremes so that he could meet Jesus, and Jesus called him down out of the tree. And it reminds us that even though Levi was out to see this man that he had heard speaking before, that other tax collectors were baptized by John the Baptist, because of this message that they were sending out. And it makes us feel like Levi was searching for Jesus, but in fact, Jesus was searching for Levi, and Jesus is searching for all of us that are sick, that are not whole, and that's mentally, spiritually, physically. And so today is just 2 verses that are hinging on the Pharisees and scribes' attitude towards Jesus befriending the tax collector. We talked last time how they were called publicans and no one liked them. So, they didn't care because they were making tons of money, and when you're making tons of money, you can find other people that are making tons of money and you don't care about normal people liking you. But apparently there was that missing piece inside that Levi was looking and searching for. We're going to focus on the Pharisees' attitude, and in that attitude, Jesus' reply to them is based on the fact that he came that the sick may have wholeness. And so as we're talking about what Jesus is talking about, it's a great segue for us to talk about how we can take care of ourselves physically, but all in all, we all need Jesus spiritually for wholeness. And so these 2 verses, Mark 2, verses 15 through 17, says, "Now it happened as he was dining in Levi's house that many tax collectors and sinners also ate together with Jesus and his disciples. For there were many, and they followed him. And when the scribes and Pharisees saw him eating with the tax collectors and sinners, they said to his disciples, 'How is it that he eats and drinks with tax collectors and sinners?' When Jesus heard it, he said to them, 'Those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.'" It's something else that we kind of just want to mention in there, because this is often used almost as a handicap, and that's a perfect word to use with the whole sickness theory. A lot of times you'll hear people say, well, the church is the hospital and the church is for sick people. So you just kind of want to put a little bit of that myth to rest. And it's just like man, we've been dealing with some storms here lately. And so, and they come from nowhere. I mean, sure, the forecast says it's a 50-70% chance of severe thunderstorms. They say that every day. And some of us 5 minutes away will get them. Some of us 5 minutes in the other direction will not get them. I've been fortunate in this area, fortunate for the grass, that is, and the flowers and everything else, is that we've gotten them like every day. But when they come, it's like you see the clouds rolling. It could be 5 minutes and it could be 15 minutes. And every day I'm like running somewhere thinking I can get right back here. And I found myself sitting in my driveway a couple of times trying to ride out the storm. And in the area that I live in, because we're very close to the Anacostia tributaries and a lot of the river tributaries that go and flow. That's why I love living out here, because we're along the road, the bike trails and things like that that align themselves with the river, and I love the water. And so our little town that I live in is historic for flooding. In fact, about 10 years ago, we adopted a plan from the Russian people where it's like, it looks like a torpedo. It's this huge thing that costs us millions of dollars, and what it does is that when the waters rise, it has the ability to bring the water in, and it goes through the churning period, and then the water spits out into this basin area that we created. Before then, literally all of the houses within that 2-block diameter where the main, where you guys see me walking on the trail, where I'm always taking the little pictures that you love, houses, literally the entire basements and up to portions of the first floor would just flood out, and it was just like something that people like accustomed to. I don't know how you kind of get accustomed to that. I guess just like people that live along the river coast and things. But anyway, say all that to say that it floods around here a lot, and we put these river what we call flower garden beds in that are supposed to kind of help with that. They just put one alongside me last year, and ever since then, my backyard floods a lot, like in this little 10 by 10 area, and so, you know, that's why my watermelons are doing really well. But anyway, during the storms, the police officers, our little town, they're like sitting out in their cars, because I got caught coming in yesterday, and I saw the police chief at the back of my street. And so what happens is that when the water rises, it rises so quickly that a lot of times it covers people's basements. It's just, you just don't see it coming in, so they'll go and they'll make sure that everybody is okay. Do you need some extra help or whatever? And so though I may have water in my backyard, water in my backyard isn't nearly as important as the water that's sitting in somebody's basement. I'm laughing because I can't believe I'm taking 15 minutes to give you an analogy of what I'm trying to say here about this sickness. And so it's like whenever you have a flood, you have emergency FEMA folks that come out, and though you may have some wet carpet, the person that has a wet entire floor is going to be the person that gets the most attention. But that does not mean that the person that doesn't have the wet carpet doesn't need some attention. It's just that their attention right now is not as urgent. It's when you go to a train wreck or some other type of natural disaster, you have people that are like really in need, and then you have people that are okay, and they even telling you, no, I'm okay, I just got a hole in my leg, but that person has a hole in their head over there, you know, go get them. And so what Jesus is saying is that we all need him. Some of us need him a lot more than others, but we all are in need of the type of healing that he brings, and that healing is to get us to turn from our sinful ways and repent. So here in this passage, you see several times he's talking about the tax collectors and sinners. So it wasn't that tax collectors were sinners, it was their behavioral thing. And then looking at it from the scribes and the Pharisees' point of view, for them, sinners were, if you could go out and shoot somebody or murder someone, they put you in the same, you had those sinners, but then you had people that did not ascribe to the scribal laws and regulations about washing your hands before you eat and not touching things that were unclean. So they called those types of people sinners. In fact, they didn't just call them sinners, they were like the worst of the earth. You know, if your daughter was to marry someone that was involved in not their ceremonial rituals of washing your hands 15 times a day or something. It was like your daughter is marrying a beast or something, you know. So their level is that they called those the people of the land if they didn't do these 15,000 million rules and regulations that they had. So they grouped all this. So that would be a lot of people. So not only did you have the tax collectors, who were notoriously, like we said a couple of weeks ago, not great people because they were lining their pockets. They were taking the taxes for the Roman emperors, but they were also getting what they could from people, and they literally could charge you whatever they wanted to charge you. So they weren't considered to be great people. And so if you're one of these people, then your friends are also like you. You know, the flock. What do they call it? Birds of a flock together. Birds of a feed or whatever. And so these were the type of people that were at the dinner at Levi's house. And this is what the scribes and the Pharisees were like, wow, really? And Jesus just once again is throwing the gauntlet down and is like, yeah, really. These are the people that really need me. And guess what? When I come and I present myself to them as a friend. And see, when you know you're an outcast, when you know that there are not a lot of people that like you, not necessarily for your professional qualities or for just your personality or whatever. And then there's someone that in spite of you, they befriend you anyway, even though they know your reputation. That person becomes very special to you. You know, the person that's used to people shunning them and things like that. And so Jesus is going and he's pouring this love to this group of people that are social outcasts, so to speak. And so imagine how they're going to respond to them. Not only are they going to be happy, especially knowing what he's capable of doing, because remember, they're just like everybody else. They've heard the stories of the miracles and things that he's done. So this man that can make the lame walk, can make the blind see, the mute to talk. This is the man that is befriending us. It's not just some person that's befriending us, but this man that everyone is talking about is befriending us. So it's giving them hope. And these are the people, too, that are probably friends with, we read in the Gospel of Matthew where they had mentioned when John the Baptist came and he was calling people to repentance and to be baptized, that they said the tax collectors came and they were baptized. So after they were baptized, if they were believing in the message that John the Baptist had, then they were coming back and they were telling who? They were telling their former tax collector friends, there's a new way, I'm not stealing from people anymore. I am collecting taxes, but only what is due us. And my life is better. My wallet is not as thick. And I don't have as much money, but I feel better. There's a peace. There's a joy. And so if you're that person that's been living like that, even if you get some excitement of the money, we all know people that have a lot of money, at some point they start asking themselves, is there more to life? Those are the people that are jumping off buildings more, committing suicide. We see it more and more in Hollywood because they're still searching for something, even though the thing that they thought would make them the happiest, that abundance of money, didn't do it. And so these people now, they found that peace. So they're coming back and they're telling their friends that are still in that kind of business, you know what, there's a new way. And so these people are excited. Oh, because now this man that was John the Baptist was the forerunner for Jesus. So the man that's bigger than John the Baptist is coming. He's coming to dinner. He's going to be at Levi's house. So everybody's excited. And it says many of them were there. And so they're all about, okay, let me see for myself, experience for myself, because I too want to experience what I see in ex-tax collector not taxing the way that he should be taxed. So that's what it is. And so that's what Jesus is making the thing. And he's saying, these are the people that I've come to help. But we all need his help. And so we all need to put ourselves in the presence of God. We need to focus more on doing those spiritual disciplines. I tell people we've gotten away from spiritual disciplines, and those spiritual disciplines are personal disciplines anyway, of reading the Bible and meditating on the Word of God. When you're meditating on the Word of God becomes a part of you, and it is used for healing others. I would tell you another story, but I don't want to get into this thing. But when people are hurting and they'll find their way to you, when you're walking with Jesus and meditating on the Word of God and listening and looking for opportunities to hear the Word of God, to study the Word of God, then God is going to put people like these tax collectors were plopped into his company at the dinner of Levi. God will put these people in your path numerous times throughout the day. And it's not magical or mystical when they begin to talk to you about their problems, and they will. You will be able to just share with them based on what's already in your heart and spirit, just because you're accustomed to meditating on the Word of God, being in the presence of God, walking amongst the trees and God's handiwork just allows you to see who God is. I often think in these storms that we've had here lately, that God brought the raging waters up just to try to get Jonah to do what he was supposed to do. He capsized, or was about to capsize, an entire boat full of sailors just so that he could bring his one lost sheep back into his presence, and that's what God does. And so when you talk to people and you're out walking and you see the beauty on a morning like this after a storm like that, and how raging the storm was last night, but yet what's intact this morning? Nature's intact. That little bird wasn't looking for the umbrellas that we were looking for. He wasn't wondering if his little roof was going to fall off his house with the high winds or anything. He's right out there chit-chattering along again today. And this is what God does, and the Bible tells us, that he takes care of the lilies and the birds. Then how much more is he going to do for us? And just sharing that with people, when people call and their mothers and all of a sudden in hospice, or someone else's spouse passed or whatever, you don't have to go reaching and wondering what you can say, or ignoring their phone call because you don't know what to say to them. God will that will be on your heart, and it will make a difference in people's lives. And so if you thought that the cherries, and so this is just a bag of cherries. I didn't get to the farmer's market last weekend, so this came from one of the local stores, I think over at Whole Foods. And so cherries can be expensive. That might be why they're so expensive. Try finding you some real concentrated cherry juice, and you'll get about 6 ounces for $15. But I try to do about 20 cherries every morning, and you just chew them. That's as simple as it is. Chew them. Do not try to swallow the seed in this one. I eat the seeds and the grapes and things like that, but the seed and cherries is pretty hard. So just do that 20 a day, and you want to try to hurry up on that because the cherry season is almost over. But the difference that it will make for you that have, achy knees, or when you sit down too long, you get up and you got to kind of like shift around a little bit. Inflammation and cherries are like hand in hand. So I usually make my own juice for everything, but how are you going to make cherry juice? You need 10 bags of that just to get a quart of this. So Lakewood is not from concentrated juice, but more importantly, because you'll see that on a couple of the other brands, but you want to get it because it says fresh pressed. So that is the difference. So when you go and you buy a gallon container, like my dad thinks that a gallon container of black cherry juice from somebody for $5.99 is going to do something. It's not, because it's not fresh pressed. Okay, so this is Lakewood. Usually these are probably about $8. I usually buy them by the case because I go through quite a bit of this when I'm not doing my cherries. So that's why I have some left, because cherries are in abundance right now. And sometimes I pour it over my berries in the morning. So that's what you want to do, is black cherry tart juice. And I had mentioned to someone else online, I think Iris, that also beet ginger turmeric. Again, Lakewood. Lakewood does the fresh pressed juice, which is about as good as you're going to get in a bottle. And so beet ginger turmeric. Remember, we've talked about that. So you have to be smart, people. I've mentioned before that we can do beet juice, just put it in our juicer, but you never want to do more than 2 ounces at a time. Beet juice is extremely potent. That's why whenever you usually find beet juice, it's mixed with carrot juice or celery juice or something. But notice what I just said about that container. Beet, ginger, turmeric. Now, ginger and turmeric, those are pretty heavy duty spices. That's not going to be but so much turmeric root and so much ginger root. So the majority of that is still beet juice. So with that container, that's going to last you a lot longer, because you're not going to be drinking more than just a little hiccup of that. or else your head's going to be spinning. One day I went gulping it from the container because I live alone, I can do that. And I thought it was the black tart cherry juice. And before I really realized it, I had probably taken about 6-7 ounces of it. And my head was spinning for the entire hour that I was working out after that. So anyway, that's that. Those are just some handy little tips. But today I want to talk about my summer salad. So you guys know I do the mill salad, which has a ton of mixed greens and all kinds of stuff in it. But in the summertime, I stick a lot with what comes out of the garden. So these are winding down towards the end in terms of cucumbers. So these aren't really like your beef up cucumbers. These are actually pickling cucumbers that people would pickle. But I'm not. I have some from 2 years ago that I never ate, so I don't pickle anymore. I've got peppers. I've got everything that I pickled one summer when I was really into gardening. So now I eat them. So I have 5 here. They'll be gone by this time next week. So I'm just going to pick a couple of cucumbers that we've gotten from the garden. So even in yellow, not to be concerned, because they're pickling cucumbers, they're going to be that color instead of your dark green. So we're going to take just 2 of these. And then here I have a pepper. So everything that I picked for you guys today was so that we can do this to focus on medicinal properties. So everything that we're going to be putting into our major salad has a ton of medicinal properties, and this is what we pulled from the garden. I do have some cilantro and parsley. They did not come from the garden because I didn't want to go back there with all the rain. There's like a million mosquitoes in that particular bed. So I left those alone. And also, I should have grabbed some basil, but cilantro. So we're not going to underestimate the value of putting herbs, fresh herbs, into your salad. What this does in terms of healing for people that are just off the chain crazy and spending the ridiculous amounts of money associated with CBD today, this is it. I mean, you talk about heart tonic for the cilantro, parsley, flat parsley is usually what you cook with. They didn't have any curly parsley, but both of them are the same. But the medicinal properties, I always tell people 3 sprigs of parsley, and I'm not sure if they understand what 3 sprigs are. So this would be 3 sprigs. 1, 2, 3, right there on that little brick. Just these 3 little sprigs. You put this into your mouth and chew it. The thing that's so great about this is that people talk about mastication. I use that word sometimes not to let you know that I can say a 4-syllable word versus chewing, because there's a difference. Because when you start talking about blenders and juicers, you talk about its ability to masticate. And that is what you really need to start thinking about when you start looking at things like fresh herbs and what that's going to do in terms of the medicinal, healing, detoxing, cleansing properties. And so what you want to do is you really want to chew. You want to chew 15 times before you swallow. The great thing about parsley is that it's very difficult to swallow without doing that. So you actually want to masticate this until it becomes a juice in your mouth, basically. But 3 sprigs, this little thing here, I wish I had would be the equivalent of an entire orange. It's in terms of the vitamin C that you get from an entire orange, you would get from just chewing on 3 sprigs of this. We all know that you get an abundance of vitamin A from carrots. So a plate of carrots, a 1 ounce plate of carrots, more vitamin A in 3 sprigs of this. Now the real whooper duper is the calcium associated with it. The calcium and iron, you're talking a boatload, a plate of spinach, basically. A bowl of spinach, 3 sprigs of parsley. This, my friends, is healthcare reform. This, my friends, is cancer prevention. Every day. And not only that, you know how you say, and the icing on the cake. And the icing on the cake is that instead of putting that stuff in your mouth that people use to freshen their breath, and I shall not name it, but when you do not take that and you walk beside somebody that takes that, they literally smell like an alcoholic because of the amount of alcohol that's in it. And think about it, for people that don't brush their teeth, people that have lots of dead food matter in there, you're going to need something really strong like a Listerine to make your mouth smell fresh. So think about what has to be put in there in order to kill that odor. And so that in and of itself cannot be good for you. So instead, you can just chew on fresh parsley. Fresh parsley has the ability to neutralize odors, especially garlic and onion. And you're not going to find anything that smells as bad as garlic and onion. So chewing on fresh parsley, immediately after eating garlic and onion, you won't even smell the scent of the garlic and the onion. In addition to all of those great nutritional values that we talked about in terms of vitamin A and C, and the fact that it's a green food, and we know what? Green foods do what? I hear you. Clean the blood. Clean the blood. And so everything that you find in parsley, yes. Cilantro, if you've got stomach issues, for people that are nauseated, because someone was telling me when I was talking about my experience with the ibuprofen, I was like, I stopped taking that because I want to know who I am, because that thing made me feel like I didn't know who I was. And people are like, that's right, because you don't take it, I take it all the time. People take this stuff like, chewing gum when they're on their menstrual cycles and things like that. They're like, oh, I would never get through my cycle if I didn't take ibuprofen. Well, here you have it. Cilantro is the best thing for nauseated stomach, gastrointestinal problems, anything associated with stomach problems, digestion, indigestion. Here you have it. Cilantro, in addition to the same thing that we talked about in the parsley. Huge amounts of vitamin A and vitamin C. So I've already rinsed that. Just wanted to talk about what's in that. And it's just a simple thing. You can add this to anything. It's going to give it flavor. If you put that on top of a salad, it just takes it, Typically people use cilantro in like curry dishes and Thai food. But for me, it just gives it has a warm, spicy kind of taste to it. I love cilantro in my raw hummus and everything else that I do. Then we have my favorite in the world is seaweed. So people often talk about, your nails, as much yard work and craft that I do. I have to cut my nails regularly because they grow like crazy. And even my locks, my loctician is always saying, your locks just keep growing, because they'll pull. But the amount, so here's the question. Do we know what's good for hair, skin, and nails? Nope, wrong answer. Someone else? Anybody else? I have to start doing this interactive thing. Somebody told me. Well, the iodine and silicone that you had in dried seaweed is just more than enough. If you want great skin, fabulous hair, strong nails, all of that stuff. Seaweed. In addition to that, it comes from the sea. So if it is coming from the sea, then what? The trace minerals, off the chain crazy. So what keeps us well? We talk about vitamins all the time, but way before vitamins were the minerals. Where did you and I come from? The soil, minerals. So this is what you want to make sure. Whenever people are sick, I don't care what the sickness is, the illness is, I always tell people, first take a look at your mineral deficiencies. Most people are mineral deficient in something. First of all, calcium seeps from the body every time we eat sugar. So most of us are calcium deficient, definitely. It's hard enough to get calcium that's readily assimilated by the body, and then every time you eat sugar, you're pulling some of it out. Chlorine in a swimming pool also pulls a lot of calcium out of the body. Just a little footnote there. That's why I stopped going. I used to swim every day until I found that out 15, 20 years ago. So this is the type that I get. It's dried seaweed. I always tell people it looks like rat turds. That's exactly what it looks like. And it's hard. I sometimes would just take them and put them on something if I just feel like crunching. But you got to be careful with that because they do come from the sea. So they've got more than enough, probably, depending on where you buy it from, stuff that you don't want to be putting in your body. So what you do is you take literally a handful, not even a handful, just like a small palmful, and you put it into a container, and then you put some filtered water on it. And in less than, if I get out, I'm getting ready to make my salad, I'll take a handful, put it in water, and in 3 minutes, this is what you get. Now, if you just taking a first look at this, you would probably think that that was spinach, cooked spinach, or maybe some chopped up collard greens that had been steamed. And so that's what it looks like. It literally doesn't have a taste to it. It tastes salty in terms of the fact that it comes from the sea, Some people can't get beyond the smell, but once you let it sit in the water, the smell goes away. You can smell the smell. Oh, see, smell that? You can smell the smell a little more from the dry, when it's dry, but once you wet it. And so you put a handful of this on your salads, and you're taking the nutritional value. And when I speak of nutrition, when I talk about nutrient-dense foods or the nutritional value goes up exponentially, I'm talking about the healing factor. You want to talk about the tax collector saying, hey, we got the healer in the house, Jesus was in the house, this is the healer. So when you're putting this on your food, you are just, and why? Because it's green, and green foods do what? Whatever's going on with us is in the blood. That's how they find out what's going on with you. They take a blood sample. So as we clean the blood, then we're cleaning our body. Whatever was in the trash can gets dumped out of the trash can. So green foods, number one. So we've got green foods in the dried, in the fresh herbs that we're using seaweed. But the value from anything that comes from the sea, you just want to add that to your diet any kind of way you can. Now here are our staples. So we're using cucumbers. So what are the properties associated with cucumbers? First of all, they literally have zero value to them in terms of, not value, but caloric content is near zero. So there's nothing. It's water for the most part. And so if it's basically water, like we talk about watermelons, you automatically pull the D word out. So it's a diuretic, so it's going to help to flush the system. So when we're sick, when we're not well, what do we need to do? We need to flush our system. Then, of course, we take some tomatoes. The vine-ripe tomatoes will give you more value than the green tomatoes. A lot of people use these to make fried green tomatoes. I usually pull them and put them in the windowsill and let them ripen. Mine are not vine-ripe. Vine-ripe. Mine are windowsill ripe, or else they would be eaten by the little friends of ours that have 4 legs or more. So you let them sit in the window. So we take some nice tomatoes, and then of course we have the onion. So the onion is like the apple and the orange. Not the apple and the orange and the lemon, or the orange and the grapefruit, the apple and the pear. So these are the brothers and sisters in the medicinal kingdom. And so onions and garlic. I could just stand here and do an entire video on why we should have garlic and onions in our life. And so I really attribute a lot of my well-being from some things that I've come back from, 3 major sicknesses when I had the TB. I had that thing growing out of my neck. You know, eating fresh garlic. And then you look at, remember the Delaney sisters that lived to be, I think, 105 or something? They talked about the fact that they ate, a lot of people, when you see the stories of, people that have longevity, and you ask them the question, what do you contribute most to, your longevity? Everybody talks about the fact that they eat fresh garlic on a regular basis. But onions, to me, there's not a dish, I don't think there's a raw or a cooked dish that I really enjoy that doesn't have fresh onions. I prefer red onions. Red onions, obviously, with the color, have additional medicinal properties associated with it. But starting with just onions and garlic's ability, garlic has anisine in it. And that is like a high sulfur agent. And when you put that into the human body, it's like putting Clorox into a tub that's not clean. And I'm doing this for you because I literally know people that have never opened an onion. Well, I guess if you don't cook, you just don't do that. So you can peel away the thin skin, or, onions aren't that expensive, so you can just take a whole big fat layer off. I tend to just try and pull the skin because wherever you have a layer of skin, the majority of the nutrients that are most prominent in that particular food, fruit or vegetable, are found just beneath the skin. So unless I'm in a hurry, I'll pull it off. But you see that took 2 seconds. And so hopefully you guys are composting as well. So then you have your onion. If you don't want to be crying and water coming all out of your eyes, if you have a good onion, because it has all of that coming, and you're not doing a live video, then you run it under cold water, and that will temporarily just kind of subdue it a bit. I think God is just showing me some favor, because by now I'd be like rubbing my eyes with onion on my fingers. And so that's what you want to do. You want to slice horizontally and vertically. You want to be careful when you take the knife close to the end, because one time I was doing a live video when I chopped my little finger. It wasn't with an onion though, it was with a raw mango. I personally don't think that you can have too many onions on any dish, so I tend to go overboard. I'll usually cut everything that's there, put it in a jar, and try to put it on something else within a day or so. If you know you're not going to use it, then leave it semi-cut, because the properties tend to escape once it has been sliced and diced. And so here we have the rest of the red onion. So onion brings flavor. So for those two that are like, I need some flavor to my food, and they don't like healthy food because they tend to think that healthy food doesn't have flavor to it, there's your flavor. If you want flavor, then you use as much onion, olive oil, a little sea salt, jalapeno pepper as you want, and it will bring the natural flavor of the cucumbers and everything else out. So I just let the onions kind of sit there. That may be a little overboard, but we can put some over on the side, and we can always chop up the other two cucumbers that are there. So here you have your cucumber. A lot of people discard a lot of the cucumber. I just take a small piece off of the tip. And I'm just showing you this because it's one of those things where you come in from work, and literally people talk about fast food, and I don't know a fast food chain anymore where people aren't standing in the driveways now are longer than football fields, you know, because so many people eat fast food. So I don't know what's fast about having to go to Chick-fil-A or any of these other places and sit in these driveways for 15, 20 minutes. And then you've got your food getting cold as you go home. I guess if people, I don't know if you're eating food in your car. And so you take your cucumber, and again, it's all about stacking. So you cut horizontally, stack them, and then you come down and quarter them. So that's 2, 1, 2. And then vitamin A, potassium, and magnesium you also get in your cucumbers. Do you know which family the cucumbers belong to? So here you have it. I'm just showing you some simple dicing techniques. So you cut the cucumber horizontally, you take it in half and stand it up so that you can easily come down and quarter it. And I say this because I've gone to people's house where they've made food, and you'd be like, who cut that onion? You know, it's a big old piece of onion here or a little teeny piece there. So this way, it kind of helps your dishes have a more attractive look to them. So we've got nice quartered pieces of cucumber. See? Everything kind of looks like they go together. And then we take our little pepper here that got a little sick. I don't know, maybe something tried to get to it. So you always inspect the inside, because that's a chili pepper. And on the inside, you should see a little bit of red seeding. And when you see that, you know you got a little heat going on, so you can decide how much of it you want to use or not. Here's the other thing, because in your gourmet books, they will teach you how to cut peppers, and you'll see more when I do the green pepper. So there's your hot pepper that we're going to throw in there. So here's your green pepper. What you want to do is come and slice the head, close to the head. Now, most people will remove this and toss it out. What I will do is take it and pull the seeds and filter them into the salad, and then throw away that piece. Why? Because I think more than anything else, peppers, green, red peppers, jalapeno peppers, all peppers. The real, we talk about medicinal properties being in all live foods, but the ones that are associated with peppers, off the chart, and any doctor will agree with that when they take a look under a microscope and you're looking at the characteristic values of the peppers versus comparing it to some of the healing properties of some of the pharmaceutical drugs that are being used. And it's just amazing what peppers do. Not to mention the feel good. I mean, the way that they open up and clear the sinus passages and things, you know, it just makes you feel better smelling. And this is another thing is why you want to get into preparing your food at home, because even if I weren't feeling well right now, I would be feeling better by the time at the completion of putting this together. Because when your hands are touching foods that have this many medicinal properties associated with it, then that's aromatherapy, touch therapy. You're smelling, you're touching, you're seeing, you're looking, all that that's good. So then we're going to chop up the cilantro. See how simple this is? And so again, it's always stacking. So you take the cilantro, you fold it as small as you can, and then you just start chopping away. See how easy that was? And you spin your plate in the opposite direction and chop again. And you take your knife, chop again. That's way too much cilantro. And so then you do the same thing with your flat parsley. You bend and fold it. I'm only going to bend a little piece because I think we put way too much herbs, and I'm going to have to chop those other cucumbers to make a huge salad. And then somebody can inbox me or text me if they want to come get a bowl, a big giant bowl or something. It's going to be way too much. But again, you can't have too much. That is too much, because you're really not supposed to put a whole lot of herbs. Then we're going to put sunflower and pumpkin seeds. So these are seeds, pumpkin and sunflower seeds. Unbeknownst to what, I love doing this in the children's class. So sunflower seeds are what? Sunflower seeds come from the sunflower, which is yellow, which makes it a yellow food, which means it has lots of potassium, which means that it's a natural laxative. Pumpkin seeds, hint, 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 after I just did sunflower seeds, would be what? Pumpkin seeds come from the pumpkin, which is an orange food, which means they're great for the skin. Orange foods are great for the skin, which also reminds me that I never told you what family the cucumbers belong to, the zucchini and squash family. And so then we're going to put some of our dried seaweed in here that has been soaked. I usually use Kalamata olives for everything, but I didn't have any, so I have these California ripe olives. I again have gone to people's houses and I'm like, why is that big chunk of olive like that? A whole olive in my salad. So just take 2 seconds and chop down your olives just so that it blends better with the rest of the salad. Olives too, especially sun-ripe olives, again, the minerals involved are worth it. Unfortunately, we can't pull ripe olives off of the bushes here, the vines on the East Coast. So that's one of the very few things the ripe California sun-ripe olives I will have to buy in a can. Otherwise, you really want to stay away from canned products, and typically because they're such a healthy food, especially when you buy them from the health food store, and that's why you're going to spend more from the health food store, is that the way that they are packaged in the can is far better than your typically packaged canned goods. So it takes 2 seconds to do the olives or not. And then a lot of times when you're doing salads, I usually stick with the cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes, for whatever reason, has been really slow growing in the garden this year. So we have these big fat beefsteak tomatoes, which you just take a V shape with your knife to get out the top seed part. And even again, in some of your famous gourmet cooking books, they'll tell you how to seed a tomato so that the seeds are not in your dish. You want, again, just like most of the nutrients are just beneath the skin. Again, we're doing horizontal, vertical slicing to just give it. So once you're doing your salads for presentation, you see the tomatoes here, they're about the same size as the cucumbers that were quartered. So you kind of want to keep things in the same texture. So we're going to go to the other tomato until I tune out, and I'm going to chop that tomato and put it in my salad that I'm going to eat off my floor because it got the 3-second rule. And so that's the only thing you want to throw away is this top part of the tomato. I'm going to do this quickly just so that you guys can see what it ends up looking like at the end. Tomatoes can be a little tricky to work with because of the wetness when they're ripe like this. So you see how I put it up on its end, on the top side. Typically it's easier to cut things on the flat horizontal side, but when we do that and you're pressing on the tomato as you saw from the other side, the juice gets all over the place. So we'll just carefully slice it vertically on the top, turn it around or turn your board around and go in the other direction. And then that way everything is symmetrical, and when you begin to stir things up, it just gives it a better appearance. And the way that you stir that up, notice that the things that we used were very light and delicate in terms of the texture. So unlike a salad that has potatoes and raw sweet potatoes or something in it, that it would be a little stiffer. And so this is going to be a tad bit more delicate. So you'll use your tongs and you just move it up and down until you can get a good combination going on. Probably should have used a larger bowl. You just want to kind of get it mixed in pretty good. Let me rinse this tomato. Put that in there. So we need some more tomato. You can see that clearly. And so, unfortunately, I can't see your questions, but I'm spending time doing this because I think sometimes people watch, you know, how people used to watch the videos when video production first came out. You'd be sitting on the end of your bed with some Haagen-Dazs ice cream watching, what was the guy's name, Simon, or what was the little Richard Simmons, do his little thing, and the faster he moved the board, you be going with your spoon. So I think sometimes you guys are making some comments and you're watching what I'm doing, but I haven't gotten any feedback on, yeah, you know, Dallas, I made that pesto and that peach pie that I showed you guys how to do last week. Got a lot of comments on that. A lot of people inboxed me some questions. But I never hear that, oh, I tried that and it was really good. And so this is about as simple as you can get. And so that will become our salad. And so what we want to do is we want to add a little bit more value to it. So what we're going to do, we're going to add some raw corn to it. This is organic corn. And you kind of want to stick with when you can do completely fresh stuff, but because I eat a lot of corn and I'm not about to be shucking it off or skimming it off. Fresh corn on the cob to me should be just eaten by itself. So you simply do this, and all you have to do is sprinkle it with hot water to thaw it out. And then because the heat, which is not too hot, you know, it doesn't take a lot to take something frozen and thaw it. But after you do that, then you want to switch and run a little cold water on it because you're mixing it with things that have been prepared at room temperature. And so that's going to give us some more color. The more colors you have in your salad, the better. Now we could add a lot of color, some sweet peppers, and you go overboard, then you'd be coming closer and closer to the meal salad. You don't want to do that with this because we have the hot peppers in there. That is going to be enough. The only other thing that I would do is I add a little raw honey to most of the salads that I do. This is a raw honey that you can get locally. This is something my friend has a beehive, so she packaged this for me, and it has the comb in it. So I'm going to pour some of that on my personal bowl. I can do that now. And then, because I want to show you what else you want to do. So here becomes your packaged salad for the week. So for those of you who have crazy busy schedules like me, you know, you make something like this that took what? Maybe 15 minutes. If I wasn't talking, literally that would have taken me 12 minutes to do. So you have this. I can package this in glass containers that it will probably be 6 really nice sized containers. And then what you do is you put, if you want, you can add some fresh lemon to it as a natural preservative, but understand that whenever you're using red onions and seaweed, it's going to be preserved pretty good. And you're not going to, you know, something like this is going to be gone by Saturday. So I'll have 4 or 5 big, huge servings between now and Saturday, and that's going to be gone. So for 10 minutes of your time and to have something prepared, I know that's when we get in trouble, is when we come home and we're hungry and there's nothing prepared. So this would be a small serving. So we'll sit this here. Sit it here. And then what we'll do is we'll add like we're going to consume it. I knew it. So I'll put a tad bit of the honey on. I'm going to be done in a minute, guys. And then we use the fresh herbs, but because it's Greek-like salad, I'll put some dried Italian seasonings on it. And then I'll put some dried Italian seasonings in the larger batter, and I'll put some additional Italian seasonings on the personal serving when I eat it. And then the other thing I want to show you right quick is, some of you have seen the photos I do. So we always have sprouted nuts. So we have some sprouted walnuts here, and that's just walnuts that have been soaked so that they're easier on the digestive system. I'm going to put these back in the refrigerator, and I'm going to use that to make some walnut pate later on this evening. And then I told you about the 5 spice. So cinnamon, the medicinal properties associated with cinnamon, allspice. It's just like the cayenne pepper is for the health community, where you take bare aspirin. People were taking bare aspirin until they told you that causes internal bleeding, ulcer bleeding. So cayenne pepper is synonymous with the traditional Chinese medicine use cinnamon. I tell people, put a little cayenne pepper under your tongue when you feel like you're having a heart attack or a stroke. It will open up wherever the blockage is. And so cinnamon does the same thing along with a whole lot of other stuff. So cinnamon is something you want to use on a regular basis. And then blackstrap molasses for people that are having the inflammation, the arthritic pains and stuff. So blackstrap molasses, whoa, talk about, you know, this is the brand that I suggest. Jello is good is when you hold the bottle up and it's slow to move. So this is the first run of sap through the tree. But look at this. Vitamin D, calcium is 191 milligrams. That's almost 19% of what is recommended on a daily basis. That is huge. And you're talking 1 tablespoon. Then the iron levels are 3.2 milligrams, which is 20% of your RDA. Potassium, a whopping 352 milligrams, coming close to 8%. And we've talked about cellular development in terms of living and dying at the cellular level, and that's all predicated on potassium and sodium. I talk about the carrots giving you excellent. Well, this here, a tablespoon of this, when I start to not feel that great, playing way too much tennis on way too hot days, I start taking a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses on a daily basis, because I get so much calcium and iron and everything else from all the other stuff that I do, sea moss and seaweed. I don't take it every day, but for those of you who are not eating like that, and you really want your body aches and pains to go away, unsulfured molasses, yes, but plantation blackstrap molasses is huge. So what I also do on a regular basis is I just take the blackstrap molasses and I'll mix it with the Chinese spice, and I'll put my walnuts and maybe a couple of pecans, and then I usually top my salads with that as well. Now you can put olive oil on this. I have a wonderful salad dressing that I have that's made with simply olive oil, garlic, and tamari. So that's it. You can just sprinkle this with some olive oil and you're good. So we also canned, if you want. I was just thinking, for those of you that may not be completely accustomed to having stuff that's not sweet, you've got the little honey on it, but you can also add just a few raisins if you like. That's more than a few. And so we have a wonderful, refreshing salad for the hot summer days that we're going into a cool down here, but something like this is like taking a diuretic pill. You know, talk about blood thinners, talk about bringing your blood pressure down, so many other great things, and then it tastes great too. You can also slice an avocado and put it on top if you want. You can put some sliced apple on it. Remember, the apple and the lemon are neutral. That is when you can mix fruits and vegetables together. So you can slice an apple and put it on here. We also have some shredded vegan cheese. One of my favorites is Vega Life, for when people come over and they're not completely into what I'm into. I'll usually put a tablespoon of that on that for them. I hope that's been helpful. At the end of the day, we all need to be whole. Whole mentally, physically, and spiritually. Jesus is the answer to our spiritual health, without a doubt. But he also wants us to be well. So we have to take care of our bodies the best that we can. And the best way to start is in your kitchen and making sure that you're eating foods that are highly cleansing and extremely medicinal. See you in 2 weeks.